Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ships through the bridge window of his vessel Horizon's Edge and felt his heart sink into his stomach. 12 human exploration ships had been searching this sector for new worlds when the enormous fleet appeared out of nowhere like ghosts materializing from empty space. The alien vessels were huge and sleek with dark metal surfaces that seemed to absorb light itself and weapon ports that glowed with threatening energy. Jake had been leading exploration missions for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His small fleet was designed for discovery, not war, and the ships carried scientific equipment instead of heavy weapons. Each vessel held 30 crew members who had signed up to explore the galaxy and make peaceful contact with new species. They had no idea they were about to face an empire that had ruled this part of space for 3,000 years. The alien fleet commander sent a message that came through their translation computers in a cold, mechanical voice. Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Fourth Fleet demanded immediate surrender and told the humans they must kneel before the great empire or be destroyed. The message made it clear that resistance would mean death for every human in the fleet. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew and saw fear mixed with determination. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez at the communications station was young, but brave and had volunteered for this mission to see the stars. Chief Engineer Mike Patterson had 3 children back on Earth and always carried their pictures in his pocket. Navigator Carol Lynch had dreamed of exploring space since she was 5 years old. These people trusted Jake to make the right decision, the horror. Captain opened a channel to all 12 ships in his fleet and spoke clearly so everyone could hear his words. He told them the aliens wanted surrender, but he would not kneel to anyone who threatened human lives. Jake said they were explorers, not soldiers, but they would fight if they had to, because that was what humans did when faced with bullies. The response from his fleet was immediate, as every captain agreed they would stand together. Admiral Vexatar was surprised when the humans refused his demands because no species had ever dared to resist the Zephyrian Empire. His massive ships had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of alien races without serious resistance. The Admiral thought these humans were either very brave or very stupid and decided to teach them a lesson about Zephyrian power. The battle began when Vextar ordered his ships to fire warning shots, but Jake responded by having his fleet scatter in all directions. The human ships were much smaller and faster than the alien vessels and used this advantage to avoid the heavy weapons. Jake realized they could not win a direct fight, so he ordered his captains to use ramming attacks and suicide runs to damage as many enemy ships as possible. The first human ship to die was the Star Wanderer when it flew directly into a Zephyrian cruiser and exploded in a ball of fire. Captain Lisa Grant and her crew of 30 people gave their lives to destroy an enemy ship that was 10 times larger. The explosion was so powerful, it damaged 2 other alien vessels and showed the Zephyrians that humans would rather die than surrender. More human ships followed the same desperate strategy as they realized conventional weapons were useless against the alien armor. The Deep Explorer rammed into the side of a Zephyrian battleship and tore a huge hole in its hull before both ships were destroyed. Captain Ben Murphy used his ship New Frontier as a missile and crashed it into the alien flagship's weapon systems and disabled half their guns. Amy Rodriguez watched from the bridge as ship after ship made their final runs and felt tears running down her face. These were her friends and colleagues who were dying to buy time for someone to escape with word of the alien threat. Jake ordered her to prepare the fastest scout ship for launch and told her she had to reach Earth with news of what happened here. The battle continued for 3 hours as the remaining human ships fought with desperate courage that amazed even their enemies. The Zephyrians had expected an easy victory, but instead found themselves in a brutal fight against humans who refused to quit. When the last human ship, except for Amy's scout vessel, was destroyed, 37 alien ships had been damaged or destroyed by the small human fleet. Admiral Vex's tar looked at the wreckage floating in space and felt something he had never experienced before. The humans had lost the battle completely, but they had fought like demons and made the Zephyrians pay a terrible price. No species had ever caused such damage to a Zephyrian fleet, and the Admiral began to wonder what kind of warriors these humans might be if they came prepared for war. Amy Rodriguez escaped in her damaged scout ship and began the long journey back to Earth with the most important message in human history. She carried data about alien technology and fleet positions, but more importantly, she brought proof that humanity had found an enemy that wanted to destroy them. Her last transmission before entering hyperspace was simple and terrifying. They were coming, and they thought humans were weak. Grand Admiral Morthak stood in the command center of his flagship Eternal Dominion and studied the reports from Admiral Vextar's encounter with the unknown species called humans. The battle data showed that 12 primitive vessels had somehow destroyed 37 ships of the Fourth Fleet before being eliminated. Morthak found this disturbing, but decided the humans had simply gotten lucky with desperate tactics that would not work against a proper invasion force. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled over 300 star systems for 3 millennia, and no species had ever successfully resisted their conquest fleets. Emperor Zalthros himself had ordered Morthak to lead 500 of their most advanced warships to crush this new threat and add another system to their empire. The Grand Admiral felt confident that such overwhelming force would end human resistance in a matter of days. Morthak's fleet was the largest the Empire had assembled in over a century and included ships that had conquered entire civilizations. The massive dreadnoughts carried weapons that could destroy planets, while the smaller cruisers were fast enough to hunt down any vessel that tried to escape. Each ship was crewed by warriors who had trained their entire lives for conquest and had never known defeat in battle. Meanwhile, on Earth, the emergency session of the Global Defense Council was meeting in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. President Marcus Webb looked around the table at the faces of world leaders who had just received the most shocking news in human history. Amy Rodriguez had arrived 3 days ago with proof that hostile aliens were preparing to invade Earth and destroy human civilization. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan presented the military analysis of the alien technology that Rodriguez had brought back from the battle. The Zephyrian ships were more advanced than anything humans had built, but their weapons and defenses were not impossible to counter. Dr. Ryan Clark had been working around the clock to reverse engineer the alien systems and find weaknesses that human forces could exploit. The vote was unanimous when President Webb called for total war mobilization. Every nation on Earth would contribute ships and soldiers to defend their home world against the coming invasion. The military-industrial complex that had been building exploration vessels would immediately switch to producing warships designed for one purpose: killing aliens who threatened human survival. Admiral Sullivan explained that Earth's true military capacity had been kept secret from the galaxy for decades. The exploration fleets that made first contact with other species represented less than 1% of humanity's actual space force. Hidden shipyards throughout the Sol system had been building warships in preparation for exactly this kind of threat. Dr. Clark revealed that human military doctrine was completely different from what other species used in space combat. While aliens fought according to ancient rules of engagement, humans had developed tactics based on total war concepts from their own violent history. The Zephyrians would expect civilized battle, but humans would give them something far more brutal and effective. The first sign of the coming storm appeared when Zephyrian scout ships entered human space and began attacking the outer colonies. The peaceful settlements on Proxima Station and New Helsinki were destroyed without warning as Morthak tested human defenses. The alien ships broadcast surrender demands after each attack and waited for Earth to respond with panic and submission. Instead, Earth went completely silent and all communications from the Sol system simply stopped. The Zephyrians interpreted this as fear, but they had no idea that humanity was using the time to complete their war preparations. Every hidden shipyard was working at maximum capacity to finish the vessels that would defend Earth and every military base was training soldiers for the battle of their lives. Captain Alex Turner received his orders while his stealth frigate was docked at the secret base inside Asteroid Ceres. The Ghost Squadron consisted of 12 ships, designed to look like space debris on enemy sensors until they struck without warning. Turner and his crews had trained for years to fight exactly this kind of enemy, and they were eager to show the aliens what human ingenuity could accomplish. Admiral Lisa Chang took command of the first battle group from her flagship Defiant Storm and began moving her ships into position throughout the Sol system. The massive dreadnoughts and cruisers were painted black to blend with space and carried experimental weapons based on captured alien technology. Chang had fought in the resource wars 20 years ago and understood that victory required absolute commitment to destroying the enemy. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Pierce led the first briefing for his newly formed Xenocide Marines who would board alien ships and eliminate their crews in close combat. The soldiers wore power armor reverse-engineered from Zephyrian technology and carried weapons designed specifically to kill alien life forms. Pierce told his troops they were about to make history by showing the galaxy that humans were the deadliest predators in space. The Zephyrian conquest fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to find terrified humans begging for mercy. Grand Admiral Morthak was confident his 500 ships would crush any resistance and complete the conquest within a week. The fleet moved toward Earth in perfect formation while broadcasting final surrender demands to the silent planet. Morthak found it strange that his sensors detected no human ships or defensive structures around Earth, but he assumed the primitives were hiding in fear. The Grand Admiral had conquered dozens of species, and they all followed the same pattern of panic, followed by quick surrender. He had no reason to think humans would be any different from the other weak races his empire had absorbed. What the Zephyrians did not know was that they were flying into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. Every asteroid in the belt had been hollowed out and filled with weapons, while thousands of human warships waited in complete stealth mode for the perfect moment to strike. Earth had learned from the first battle and prepared a reception that would shock the alien invaders to their core. Deep beneath the surface of Europa, Admiral Lisa Chang walked through the massive underground shipyard that had been carved from ice and rock over the past 15 years. The cavern stretched for kilometers in every direction and contained more warships than most species could build in a century. Chang stopped beside her flagship Defiant Storm and ran her hand along the black armor plating that would soon face alien weapons in battle. The ship was a monster of human engineering that combined lessons learned from every war in their history with technology reverse-engineered from the first encounter with the Zephyrians. The Defiant Storm carried enough firepower to level a city and armor thick enough to withstand direct hits from alien energy weapons. Chang had requested the most advanced vessel in the fleet because she planned to lead from the front when the aliens arrived. Captain Alex Turner checked the stealth systems on his frigate Shadow Strike one final time before the coming battle. The Ghost Squadron ships were designed to appear as floating debris on enemy sensors, while their crews waited for the perfect moment to strike. Turner's ship carried experimental weapons that could slice through alien armor like paper and engines, silent enough to approach within knife-fighting range before being detected. The 12 ships of Ghost Squadron had been practicing coordinated attacks for 3 years and could move together like a school of fish when hunting their prey. Turner knew his crews were ready because they had been training for exactly this scenario since the first reports of hostile aliens reached Earth. The captain smiled as he thought about how surprised the Zephyrians would be when empty space suddenly came alive with human weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Pierce stood before 2,000 Xenocide Marines in the underground training facility beneath the Rocky Mountains and delivered his final briefing before combat. The soldiers wore power armor that made them look like mechanical demons and carried weapons specifically designed to kill alien life forms in close combat. Pierce had handpicked each Marine from the toughest veterans of human special forces units. The armor suits were reverse-engineered from Zephyrian technology, but improved with human innovations that made them faster and more deadly than the original designs. Each Marine carried enough firepower to destroy a small building and had trained in zero-gravity combat until they could fight in any environment. Pierce told his troops they were about to board alien ships and show the galaxy that humans were the most dangerous predators in space. Dr. Ryan Clark worked frantically in his laboratory beneath NORAD as he put the finishing touches on the weapons. Systems that would give humanity an edge in the coming battle. The alien technology captured from the first encounter had been studied and improved until human ships carried guns more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had ever faced. Clark had not slept for 3 days, but he refused to rest while Earth's survival hung in the balance. The most important discovery was that Zephyrian shields were designed to stop energy weapons, but had never been tested against the kinetic projectiles that humans preferred. Clark had developed railguns that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds and punch through alien defenses like they were made of paper. The aliens would learn too late that human engineering was more dangerous than they had imagined. President Marcus Webb stood in the war room beneath the White House and watched the tactical displays that showed alien ships entering the outer edges of the Sol system. The Zephyrian fleet was massive and powerful, but Webb felt confident that Earth's hidden defenses would give them a nasty surprise. The president had authorized the use of every weapon in humanity's arsenal, including some that violated several interstellar treaties. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the defense from her command center on Luna, where she could monitor every human ship and weapon platform in the system. The asteroid belt had been transformed into the largest minefield in galactic history, with each rock hiding weapons and sensors that would trigger when the aliens came within range. Sullivan had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, and she intended to make the Zephyrians pay for underestimating humanity. The most impressive sight was the third battle group, under Admiral John Davis, which consisted entirely of ships built in the hidden yards of the outer planets. These vessels had never been seen by alien scouts and carried weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Davis had positioned his ships among the moons of Saturn, where they waited like sleeping giants for the order to strike. Captain Nicole Hayes commanded the experimental dreadnought Terra's Fury, which had been completed just days before the alien arrival. The ship was twice the size of anything humans had built before and carried enough weapons to fight an entire fleet by itself. Hayes had requested command of the most dangerous vessel because she wanted to personally deliver humanity's response to the Zephyrian ultimatum. The crew of Terra's Fury consisted of volunteers who had all lost friends or family in the destruction of the outer colonies. They were motivated by pure rage at the aliens who had murdered innocent civilians and were eager to return the favor with interest. Hayes told her crew they would be the tip of the spear that pierced the heart of the alien fleet. Captain Beth Morgan prepared her ship Earth's Wrath for the suicidal charge that would begin the battle. The dreadnought had been specially modified to survive long enough to reach the center of the enemy formation, where its destruction would cause maximum damage. Morgan and her crew had volunteered for this mission knowing they would not survive but believing their sacrifice would save Earth. The final piece of Earth's trap was the network of sensor stations hidden throughout the system that would coordinate the attack. When the aliens moved into the killing zone, every human ship would know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The Zephyrians expected to fight primitive savages, but instead they would face the most sophisticated military machine in galactic history. Grand Admiral Morthak looked at his sensor displays and saw nothing but empty space ahead of his fleet. The absence of human ships made him confident that the primitives had fled in terror rather than face the might of the Zephyrian Empire. He ordered his fleet to advance toward Earth at maximum speed because he wanted to complete the conquest before the humans had time to organize any resistance. Grand Admiral Morthak felt the first hint of unease as his massive fleet passed through the asteroid belt toward Earth and still detected no sign of human resistance. The Zephyrian sensors showed nothing but floating rocks and empty space yet. Something felt wrong about the complete absence of defensive preparations. Morthak had conquered dozens of species, and they always tried to mount some kind of defense, even when facing impossible odds. The trap was sprung when Admiral Chang gave the signal from her hidden command post, and every asteroid in the belt, suddenly, came alive with weapons fire. What had appeared to be harmless rocks revealed themselves as disguised weapons platforms that unleashed devastating attacks on the alien fleet from point-blank range. The Zephyrians found themselves surrounded by enemies that had been invisible just moments before. Captain Turner's Ghost Squadron struck at the same instant as the asteroid platforms, when his 12 stealth frigates dropped their camouflage and appeared like vengeful spirits in the middle of the alien formation. The Shadow Strike and her sister ships had been drifting with engine power off for 3 days while waiting for this perfect moment to attack. Turner's crews opened fire with experimental railguns that punched through alien armor like it was made of tissue paper. The Zephyrian flagship Eternal Dominion shuddered under multiple impacts as human projectiles tore through its shields and hull plating. Morthak watched in shock as his sensors finally detected the true scope of the human forces arrayed against him. Thousands of warships were decloaking throughout the system and converging on his fleet from every direction in a coordinated attack that showed sophisticated planning. Admiral Chang's first battle group emerged from hiding behind Luna and charged directly at the alien vanguard with guns blazing. The Defiant Storm led the attack with her massive railguns, sending streams of metal death into the enemy formation, while her escort ships spread out to prevent the aliens from maneuvering. Chang had studied every detail of Zephyrian tactics and knew exactly how to counter their standard battle formations. The aliens tried to respond with their traditional energy weapons, but discovered that human ships had been designed specifically to counter this technology. The Earth vessels carried armor plating that absorbed energy blasts and reflected them back at their attackers. Dr. Clark's modifications had turned human ships into mobile fortresses that could withstand punishment that would destroy any other species. Captain Hayes brought the massive dreadnought Terra's Fury into the battle like an avenging angel of death. The experimental ship was larger than most Zephyrian cruisers and carried weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. Hayes ordered her gunners to target the alien command ships first, because she wanted to cut the head off the enemy snake before it could coordinate an effective response. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that used tactics completely different from anything in their experience. Human ships worked together like pack hunters while alien vessels fought as individual warriors according to ancient codes of honor. The humans had no honor when it came to survival and used every dirty trick their violent history had taught them about winning wars. Lieutenant Colonel Pierce's Xenocide Marines launched their assault when human ships disabled several alien vessels and left them vulnerable to boarding actions. The power-armored soldiers used cutting torches to burn through enemy hulls and then poured into the ships like a tide of mechanical death. Pierce led the first wave personally and carved a path of destruction through alien defenders who had never faced humans in close combat. The Marines moved through the enemy ships with ruthless efficiency, while their armor shrugged off alien weapons that would have killed unprotected humans. Pierce watched his soldiers tear through Zephyrian warriors like they were children, and felt a savage satisfaction at seeing the terror in alien eyes. The humans had come to deliver a message about the cost of threatening Earth, and they wanted that message written in blood. Captain Morgan began her final approach in the modified dreadnought Earth's Wrath as the battle reached its climax around her. The ship had been converted into a massive guided missile that would detonate in the heart of the enemy formation and take dozens of alien vessels with it. Morgan knew she and her crew would die, but their sacrifice would cripple the Zephyrian fleet and ensure human victory. The Earth's Wrath accelerated toward the alien flagship, while every gun on the ship fired continuously to clear a path through the enemy formation. Morgan's crew worked with desperate efficiency to keep the engines running and the weapons firing, even as alien energy beams tore chunks from their hull. The captain felt proud to lead such brave people in humanity's finest hour. Admiral Davis brought his third battle group out of hiding among Saturn's moons and struck the alien rearguard like a hammer blow. The ships of the Outer System Fleet had been built specifically for this battle and carried weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Davis ordered his captains to show no mercy because the aliens had started this war by murdering innocent civilians. The Zephyrian formation began to collapse under the coordinated human assault as ship after ship fell to the devastating firepower of Earth's hidden fleet. Morthak tried desperately to rally his forces, but the humans had planned their attack too well and struck from too many directions at once. The Grand Admiral realized with growing horror that his mighty conquest fleet was being systematically destroyed by primitives he had underestimated. The asteroid belt itself had become a killing field where every piece of floating rock concealed weapons that fired continuously at the trapped alien ships. The Zephyrians found themselves caught in a crossfire that gave them no chance to escape or regroup for an effective counterattack. Human engineering had turned the entire Sol system into a weapon aimed at the heart of the invasion fleet. Captain, Morgan's final charge reached its target when the Earth's Wrath rammed into the side of the alien flagship and detonated in a ball of nuclear fire that consumed both ships. The explosion was so powerful, it disabled 6 other Zephyrian vessels and sent shock waves through the enemy formation. Morgan and her crew had given their lives to deliver humanity's answer to the alien ultimatum, and their sacrifice would be remembered forever. Emperor Zalthros sat on his crystal throne in the Imperial Palace and stared at the reports that told of the complete destruction of Grand Admiral Morthak's conquest fleet. 500 of the Empire's finest warships had been eliminated by primitive humans who were supposed to be easy prey for Zephyrian forces. The Emperor felt something he had never experienced in his 300 years of rule, genuine fear of another species. The news spread through the Zephyrian Empire like wildfire as world after world learned that their invincible military had been crushed by unknown aliens from a single star system. Species that had been enslaved for centuries began to whisper about rebellion, while Zephyrian commanders demanded reinforcements to defend their own territories. The empire that had ruled the galaxy was suddenly looking over its shoulder in terror. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the war room on Earth and studied the intelligence reports that showed Zephyrian forces retreating from human space in panic. The destruction of their conquest fleet had shocked the aliens into temporary paralysis, but Sullivan knew they would eventually recover and return with even larger forces. She recommended to President Webb that humanity should strike first, while the enemy was still reeling from their defeat. The decision to take the war to Zephyrian territory was made by unanimous vote of the Global Defense Council. Earth would not wait for another invasion, but would hunt down and destroy every military asset the aliens possessed until they could never threaten humanity again. The human fleet that had defended the Sol system would become an instrument of vengeance that would teach the galaxy about the consequences of attacking Earth. Captain Nicole Hayes received command of the new Vengeance-class Dreadnought Terra's Fury and was promoted to Commodore for leading the expeditionary force into enemy territory. The ship had been rebuilt after the battle with improvements based on captured alien technology and human engineering innovations. Hayes felt honored to command the vessel that would carry humanity's message of retribution to the Zephyrian homeworlds. The Terra's Fury was joined by 50 other dreadnoughts and 300 smaller warships in the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled for offensive operations. Each vessel carried weapons designed specifically to destroy Zephyrian ships and marines trained to eliminate alien crews in close combat. Admiral Chang took overall command of the expedition, while Hayes led the vanguard that would spearhead the assault. Dr. Ryan Clark had worked around the clock to develop new weapons based on detailed analysis of captured enemy technology. The human ships now carried plasma cannons that could melt through Zephyrian armor and shield disruptors that could collapse alien defensive systems in seconds. Clark's innovations gave the human fleet advantages that no species in the galaxy had ever possessed. The first target was the Zephyrian military base at Vorthan Prime, where the Empire trained its elite warriors and tested new weapons. Captain Turner's Ghost Squadron struck without warning and destroyed the orbital defenses before the main fleet arrived to complete the devastation. The humans gave no quarter and eliminated every military installation on the planet while leaving civilian areas untouched. Lieutenant Colonel Pierce led his Xenocide Marines in boarding actions against Zephyrian command ships that tried to escape the destruction. The power-armored soldiers moved through enemy vessels like unstoppable killing machines, while their weapons cut down alien defenders who had never faced humans in close combat. Pierce took particular satisfaction in hunting down the officers, who had ordered attacks on human colonies. The human fleet moved through Zephyrian space like a plague of destruction that consumed every military target it encountered. Earth's warships appeared without warning and eliminated entire defense fleets before disappearing into hyperspace to strike elsewhere. The aliens began to understand that they were facing an enemy that fought without honor or mercy and would not stop until every threat was eliminated. Admiral Chang coordinated the campaign from her flagship, while human intelligence operatives gathered information about Zephyrian military positions throughout the Empire. The humans had learned the locations of every major base and shipyard from captured enemy records and planned to destroy them all in a systematic campaign of extermination. Chang intended to leave the aliens defenseless against any future threats. Captain Danny Brooks commanded a company of Xenocide Marines who specialized in eliminating alien command structures through targeted assassination missions. The soldiers used stealth technology to infiltrate Zephyrian facilities and kill the officers responsible for planning attacks on human territory. Brooks and his team became legendary throughout the Empire as the silent death that stalked alien commanders. The Zephyrian fleet at Kelthera Station made the mistake of trying to fight the human expedition when 50 alien cruisers engaged Terra's Fury and her escorts in what they thought would be an easy victory. Hayes ordered her ships to demonstrate the new weapons that Dr. Clark had developed, and the battle lasted less than 30 minutes. The aliens watched in horror as their energy shields collapsed and their armor melted under the assault of human plasma cannons. The psychological impact of humanity's campaign was even more devastating than the physical destruction as Zephyrian morale collapsed throughout the Empire. Warriors who had conquered dozens of species now fled in terror at the first sign of human ships, while entire fleets abandoned their posts rather than face Earth's vengeance. The aliens had learned that they were not the apex predators they had believed themselves to be. Emperor Zalthros sent desperate messages to Earth begging for negotiations and offering to discuss terms for ending the conflict. President Webb responded with a simple statement that chilled alien blood throughout the galaxy. Humanity would accept nothing less than the complete surrender of the Zephyrian Empire and the dismantling of their military forces. The Emperor realized he was facing a species that would not be satisfied with mere victory, but demanded total submission. The final phase of the campaign began when Admiral Chang led the human fleet toward the Zephyrian capital world, where the Emperor waited. In his palace, the alien home system was defended by the largest fleet in their history, but the ships were crewed by demoralized warriors who had heard reports of human invincibility. Chang smiled as she gave the order to attack because she knew this battle would end the war and establish humanity as the dominant power in the galaxy. Emperor Zalthros knelt on the marble floor of his throne room as human marines in power armor stood guard around him with weapons pointed at his head. The crystal palace that had been the symbol of Zephyrian power for 3 millennia now flew, the flag of Earth, while human ships patrolled the skies above the capital city. The Emperor, who had ruled 300 star systems, was now a prisoner waiting to learn his fate from the species he had tried to enslave. Admiral Chang walked through, The palace halls where alien artwork and treasures from conquered worlds lined the walls like trophies of empire. The human fleet had destroyed the last Zephyrian military forces in orbit above the capital after a battle that lasted only 6 hours. The aliens had fought bravely, but their ships were no match for weapons designed specifically to counter their technology and tactics. President Webb arrived on the Imperial world aboard the diplomatic vessel New Geneva to personally accept the Zephyrian surrender and establish the terms that would govern their future. The president walked into the throne room where the emperor waited and felt a grim satisfaction at seeing the alien ruler reduced to begging for mercy. Webb had come to deliver humanity's final judgment on the species that had murdered innocent human civilians. The surrender ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy as alien species watched the most powerful empire in their history submit to humans who had been unknown just 2 years before. Emperor Zalthros read aloud the document that dissolved the Zephyrian military and placed his people under Earth's protection in exchange for their lives. The Emperor's voice shook as he realized his empire had fallen to primitives he had underestimated. Terms of surrender were harsh but fair, as President Webb explained that humanity would not repeat the mistakes that had led to this war. The Zephyrians would dismantle every warship and weapon platform while paying reparations to rebuild the human colonies they had destroyed. Most importantly, they would accept human oversight of their government to ensure they never again threatened peaceful species. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood beside President Webb during the ceremony and remembered the day she had escaped from the first battle to bring warning to Earth. The young officer who had once fled in a damaged scout ship was now an admiral commanding her own battle group and serving as humanity's representative to the defeated alien empire. Rodriguez felt proud that her sacrifice had helped save her species from destruction. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as news of Earth's victory spread to every inhabited system within 1,000 light years. Species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule for centuries began celebrating their liberation, while others sent diplomatic envoys to establish relations with humanity. The humans had become the dominant military power in their region of space through sheer determination and superior tactics. Admiral Chang was promoted to Grand Admiral and given command of the new Galactic Defense Network that would protect Earth's allies from future threats. The human fleet had grown to over 2,000 ships as Earth shipyards worked around the clock to build vessels for exploring and defending the galaxy. Chang established bases throughout former Zephyrian territory to ensure peace would be maintained. The memorial service on Earth honored the crews of the first exploration fleet, whose sacrifice had warned humanity of the alien threat and allowed them to prepare for war. Captain Jake Morrison and his people were remembered as heroes who had given their lives to save their species from extinction. President Webb spoke at the ceremony and promised that their courage would never be forgotten. Dr. Ryan Clark continued developing new technologies based on alien science combined with human engineering to give Earth's forces advantages that no other species could match. The weapons that had defeated the Zephyrians were just the beginning, as Clark worked on projects that would ensure humanity remained the strongest military power in the galaxy. His innovations would protect Earth for generations to come. Lieutenant Colonel Pierce established training facilities throughout human space, where Marines learned to fight alien enemies in any environment. The Xenocide Corps had proven that humans were the deadliest close combat fighters in the galaxy, and Pierce intended to maintain that reputation. His soldiers would serve as the enforcers of humanity's new galactic order. The former Zephyrian colonies were liberated and given the choice of independence or joining Earth's growing alliance of free worlds. Most chose to accept human protection after seeing what happened to species that threatened Earth's interests. The galaxy was learning that humans protected their friends with the same intensity they used to destroy their enemies. Captain Turner's Ghost Squadron became the elite reconnaissance force that monitored potential threats throughout the galaxy and eliminated problems before they could grow dangerous. The stealth ships were invisible death that stalked anyone foolish enough to threaten human interests. Turner and his crews had become legends among both allies and enemies. The dedication ceremony for the memorial included representatives from dozens of alien species who had come to pay their respects to human courage. Many of these beings had been slaves under Zephyrian rule and owed their freedom to the sacrifice of Jake Morrison's crew. They understood that humanity had fought not just for themselves, but for every species that valued freedom. President Webb delivered the final speech of the ceremony while standing before the monument that honored the fallen heroes of the First Fleet. He told the assembled crowd that humans had come to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship, but had found war instead. Webb explained that Earth had not started the conflict, but had finished it in a way that would be remembered throughout. Galactic history. The president's words were broadcast to every world in human space as he promised that Earth would use its power to protect the innocent and punish those who threatened peace. He warned potential enemies that humanity had learned valuable lessons about the cost of mercy when dealing with aggressive species. The galaxy would know peace because Earth stood ready to enforce it with overwhelming force. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for all the humans who had died defending their species from extinction. Admiral Rodriguez looked up at the stars and thought about how 12 exploration ships had changed the course of galactic history through their courage in the face of impossible odds. Their legacy would live forever in the hearts of free beings throughout the galaxy.